those who make.
My name is Montijo Fink, and I'm a singer-songwriter, and I would love to share some of the stories of how I write music and what inspires me, and I hope they inspire you as well. One of my favorite quotes about music is by Ricardo Arjona from Guatemala. He said, "Songs are born in absolute solitude, but they find accomplices." And I found that to be true about my process in songwriting, because the very first CD I made was not an intentional project. I had actually been praying for the tribes of North America with some friends, and these drum songs came out of this time of prayer for the tribes. And suddenly I find myself making this CD, and then suddenly I find a bunch of people who are responding to the music, and it was so beyond me, because music could go where I can't all the time. And then led up to my second CD, which was Songs of War and Victory, Overcoming the Battles We Face. Because of all the trials and tribulations of life, I found myself writing songs to encourage, empower, and inspire people. And so while there are a couple of drum songs on that CD, there are a lot of different sounds, from blues to rock to contemporary folk, because I feel like every song has a personality and it expresses itself in a particular genre, so I don't get narrowly focused into one genre. And then my next CD after that was called Don't Let Me Forget, kind of a musical note to self, because I'm always writing lists and always trying to remember things, and so quite a few of those songs have to do with just encouragement again and remembering the important things in life. And finally, I just released my fourth album, which is called I Won't Stop Contending. And again, I find it's part of who I am, to fight, to persevere, to encourage other people to do the same. And that's what inspires me to write, to see people live life to the fullest, who they were created to be, what they were created to do, and somehow musically inspire them to do that. One of the songs on my latest album is called Peace, and it is the story about contending for peace. Back when I was a child, I was at youth camp, and I was on the top bunk in our cabins, and my cousin was on the bottom bunk, and she thought it was fun the whole week to bounce me up and down on these flimsy little mattresses and springs every night. Well, one night I had really experienced the power of God and had been speaking in tongues and just was so overwhelmed from the experience. We went to bed that night, and I laid down on my side, and my eyes were closed, and I was humming one of the songs from the service, and suddenly I felt this arm, this hand on my shoulder, and another hand embracing me around my ankle. And my first thought was, it's my cousin just messing with me again. But then I thought about it and thought, there's no way she has that kind of an arm length to reach around and hug me and not say a thing. So I opened my eyes, rolled over, and said, "Rhonda," and there was no response. She was fast asleep. And then I realized this was peace. This was Jesus hugging me, and just the power of that peace. I felt like a bomb could have gone off and I wouldn't have cared. It was that kind of intense peace. And I felt like he told me to always remember that. One of the songs on my latest album is inspired by a man I met once, but I went to his funeral because he made such an impact. He was a catalyst for the song called Agitators. I had been invited to share music at this racial reconciliation gathering, and he was also invited to do music, and I wanted somebody to play keys, and he was a phenomenal keyboard player. He had toured with a national band in the 1990s, so I mean, clearly he was talented. I asked him to come a little early, not for his sake, but for mine, to review some of my songs with me, so we could be prepared. And what I found was just this humble, encouraging man who was generally interested in other artists and musicians. And it was just so inspiring. He had been sick and was on dialysis, and shortly after that event, he passed away. And I felt like I really needed to go to his funeral to honor him. And so what I found at the funeral was the same thing. He was a man who could have been arrogant, could have been prideful, but wasn't. And testimony after testimony at that funeral was, wow, this guy was interested in me. He encouraged me to keep writing or to create music, and he saw potential in me. So I started thinking about the people in my life who have been agitators. And I think of that word agitator like the old washing machines where you have that center piece that goes back and forth. It was called an agitator. It moved your clothes around to clean them. And I think, who are those people in our lives that move us around, that see something in us that maybe we don't see at the time? And it's important to thank them. And that's the kind of person I want to be, as an agitator, to encourage and promote people in their gifts and what they're created to do.